What's going on, everyone? Golden Ticket to History podcast coming to you today with another fresh episode. So, for many of you who follow the regular Golden Ticket to History channel, this is the podcast specific episode. So we're able to go a little bit deeper into some concepts that wasn't covered as in depth on the regular channel. So there's a lot of topics we're going to be covering. There's some topics we're going to be covering of locations and stories that I've covered on the main channel, as well as plenty of other stories that have not been covered on the main channel, but still have a space that exists and is needed for for people to learn. One of the things I always cover is looking at finding the golden ticket to history and finding history in film, and this is another way of finding history in audio. So what we'll be covering today for our second episode is a story that's not far from my backyard. I grew up right outside of Orlando, Florida, and there was a very iconic story that dates back hundreds of years. So one of the main Native American tribes in Central Florida, or in Florida in general, was the Seminole Indian tribe. The Seminole Indian tribe has been kind of split in half, whereas about half the population still exists here in Florida. This side has had connections to things like the Seminole Hard Rock casinos, as well as the Florida State University's mascot, the Florida State Seminoles, is a homage to the Seminole Indian tribes. Whereas about another half of the population is in Oklahoma, and essentially was banished through the Trail of Tears. It's a different story for a different time. But for the sake of looking at the stories, we're talking about a small town right outside of Orlando, Florida, called Apopka. Apopka is known as either the Great Potato, the Big Potato, or Potato-Eating People. One of those. And it's also known as the indoor foliage capital of the world. They produce a lot of foliage for agriculture. It's also the hometown of the Hall of Fame NFL player Warren Sapp, the country singer John Anderson, and so many other great individuals. And what we're covering today for this story is a story of the Indian boy. So legend has it that in a stretch of 441, right in between Sorrento and Apopka, Florida, there's a stretch of Highway US 441, whereas you can see at night a figure of the Indian boy. It's said to be an apparition of a Native American spirit who is in a loincloth that can be seen darting across 441, stopping in the middle of the road, looking at driver buyers, and then running off to the sides of the road and disappearing as he hits the side of the road. That's what the legend is. I can say that I can't 100% prove that I've seen the Indian boy. However, I can give an example of on two different occasions where I saw something that just didn't seem right. So one evening I was traveling, probably about 10:30 or so at night, and I was traveling into downtown Apopka. And when I was traveling into Apopka on 441, I looked to the right and I kind of saw a shadowy silhouette of something. So I slammed on my brakes thinking that it was someone crossing the road. So I slammed on my brakes and then it disappeared out of nowhere. Can I prove that that's the Indian boy? No. It could have been my eyes playing tricks on me. It was about 10:30 at night. The traffic lights, the street lights, the changes in relations to how light hits different things could also be a factor behind that. But, just in case, Second time, I'm traveling down a different stretch of 441. This time I'm traveling a little bit closer towards Sorrento, closer towards Lake County, getting closer to the county limit between Orange County and Seminole County. For those who are not familiar with Central Florida, there are 67 counties in Florida, and many of the counties that surround Central Florida. We have Seminole County, you have Lake County, you have Orange County, you have Osceola County, and Brevard County, and parts of Volusia County. So, I'm probably leaving off one off the top of my head. But you have all these counties that surround Central Florida. So I'm traveling towards this time, back towards Apopka, but I'm traveling out of Lake County into Orange County. And this time, I see a second dark silhouette. And this one is back towards, there's a toll road called the 429. And right before the toll road, there is a section of road that I see the silhouette kind of dart across the road. Again, I can't prove that it was an apparition. I can't prove that it was anything. But all I can say is that it definitely left me puzzled as to, hearing the stories, knowing the stories. And there's a lot of things that can play into that. I don't just want to automatically come out the gate and say 100% that this legend is 100% true, and what I saw was, in fact, the Indian boy. I can, however, at least say that I did notice something. Could it have been my eyes playing tricks on me? There's a concept that's referred to as matrixing. It's actually a psychological thing that our brain does. When our brain doesn't understand things, it's kind of why our brain sees images in clouds. Even though those clouds are not trying to make those images, our brain does not like things to not be in uniformity. Our brain likes to make sense of everything it interacts with, which is why certain things, when it confuses the brain tries to find and tries to make sense of things. Or the brain just kind of goes into reset mode, kind of like when you get brain freeze. When you eat something that's too cold, your throat gets cold, and your brain doesn't know what the heck is going on, so it kind of goes through a mass reset. That's kind of what happens with matrixing. When we look in the sky and we see the clouds and we kind of try to make sense of the shapes and say, hey, that's a duck, or hey, that's a teddy bear, or hey, that's a telescope. That's kind of what happens sometimes when we see shadows, is that we're not really sure 100% what the shadows are, but we do know something's going on, and our brain does not like the fact that we cannot 100% guarantee what it is that we are seeing. So our brain tries to make sense of it. So could it have been matrixing? Absolutely. Or could it have been the Indian boy? I guess only time will tell. If I find myself traveling down US 441 again, it may find myself coming into interaction with the Indian boy. How many of you have been down 441 before? Have you had any of your own experiences with the Indian boy? Have you heard of the legend of the Indian boy here in Central Florida? I know that I've heard the story probably since about the time I was in high school, and I have definitely, when I've traveled in the evenings, I've definitely looked. And that also could play a factor, is the fact that I know there's stories about certain sections of the road, so I may take an extra effort to pay attention when I travel down certain sections of the road. That's a possibility. Or maybe it's just my imagination playing tricks on me. I don't know. But I wanted to cover just this quick little story of something that takes me back to my childhood, hearing about this story, and then my few little glimpses into my experiences with maybe having some interaction with the story. And I thought some of you would enjoy, hearing some of these stories. I have a lot of plans for a lot of episodes coming up. So if you've liked this little story about the Indian boy and a little bit of insight into my younger years, then think about hitting that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell so you don't lose out on any of the new episodes that are coming out. I'm going to try using YouTube as my main source of the podcast first, and then I'm going to start branching off into other podcast sharing services as well. But I'm going to see how it works with YouTube first. So let me know down in the comments below. Did you enjoy this quick little story, this little podcast? I've asked people on the channel before if you'd be interested in listening to a podcast, and some people said they would. Why not? So this is a little bit of a different approach to it. So instead of me taking you and visually showing you what the story is talking about, this is more or less just a conversation between me and you about some of these interesting concepts I've come across. And I have some plans to maybe bring some people on here in the near future, so it won't just be me talking every single time, but definitely do some collaborations. And this may even open itself up to more interviews. I have a couple potential interviews here in the near future with some fellow YouTubers. I also have been working on trying to get some interviews with a few celebrities. Something I've definitely been working on. I have a couple people that I've been in somewhat communications with that I would be more than humbled to be able to, get them on the channel and, showcase, not just what they've done in whatever area that they've excelled at, but getting us a chance to get to know them a little bit better of who they are outside of that role. If they're a professional athlete, what else is about them? What else, other interests do they have? Like, imagine finding out that an amazing NFL player also enjoys knitting or something along those lines. I think that would be quite interesting and quite fun. To see into what makes them work. So, as always, continue to look for the history in film. Hopefully you like this quick little podcast style video, and I want to keep making a few of them moving forward. And again, if you like this channel, think about subscribing. If you haven't subscribed to the main channel yet, it's Golden Ticket to History. I'll put a link down in the description below for the channel. So we have a couple haunted stories coming up. We have a couple of true crime stories coming up. We have some historical stories coming up. And we have some just weird facts that I'm going to be covering. I have an episode coming up very soon where I'm going to dive into just some really weird facts about things that exist. Like, I have an idea for some weird laws that exist. For example, certain laws here in Florida and abroad. I was going down a list of all the different states and some strange laws that exist. So I wanted to dive into that on an episode. So if you enjoyed this video, definitely consider hitting that thumbs up button. Till next time, have a great day, everyone.